Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sun Devil Learning Lab. My name is Miss Alford and I hope you have been staying healthy. I hope you have been staying cool in the summer heat, and I hope that you have been staying busy and enjoying your summer. Today we are going to be talking about using text evidence to come up with short answers from written text. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get started. All right, so like I said, we're going to be using text evidence throughout this lesson. If you want to grab a pencil, maybe a piece of paper or a notebook, anything to just jot down some notes throughout the lesson. If not, that's okay. Feel free to just hang out, and at some points I'm going to ask you to pause the video so you can read the text, but at other times you can just listen and learn. Throughout the video, Miss Hilton and I are going to be kind of switching off. So look for her face and we are both going to be putting this lesson together for you. So let's get started. All right. So in today's lesson, we'll review types of text evidence and how to find it. We will also be working on using text evidence in a written answer. So a little bit of an outline for today. So we will be using text evidence, like I said, but we will also review explicit and inferred text evidence. We will review quotation and paraphrasing, practice identifying text evidence to answer a question, introduce a text-dependent question, read a short story, and then also practice writing using the AQE. So that's just like a little bit, looks like a lot, but it's not. It'll go by quick, and a lot of it is pretty small stuff. So we're gonna breeze by it. So by the end of the lesson today, I want you to be able to say, I can use text evidence to support a claim in a written answer. So first, let's start with, what is text evidence? Well, if you've watched the past two videos this week that Miss Hilton and I put together, Miss Hilton talked about explicit evidence and I talked about making inferences. But overall, text evidence is anything an author writes that we can use to support an idea, answer a question, or make a claim. Explicit evidence is evidence that is clearly stated, leaves no room for confusion or questions, and that's going to be when an author writes a story. Maybe it's just a small passage, maybe it's a biography, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a news article or something from a website. The person who writes it is the author, and whatever they write, whatever words they choose to include in that text is going to be explicit information. So explicit evidence is going to be what we directly take from that. What we take from it and use it. It is clearly stated, leaves no room for confusion because that is what the author wrote. And an inference, on the other hand, is a conclusion that is made based off of information and reasoning. So we make an inference based off of our explicit evidence. So we infer what an author might be saying, what moods they're using, why they use certain words. We make an inference based off of the text that we read. Miss Hilton is going to be taking over for a little bit, talking about quotations and paraphrasing, and then the next step to using text evidence.
When we use text evidence in our writing, we often use quotes or paraphrased information. Let's talk a little bit about the differences in quotes and paraphrasing. A quotation is a word words that are taken directly from a person or an author. It is written exactly like the author wrote it. We use quotation marks and we cite the author and give them credit for what they wrote. When we paraphrase, a passage that is written or spoken by the author has been rewritten in our own words. Oftentimes we paraphrase long quotes so that they are shorter in our writing. Makes things more concise. A quote might look something like this. The price of a resort vacation typically includes meals, tips, and equipment rentals, which makes your trip more cost-effective. If we were going to paraphrase that quote, we would put it in our own words, and it might sound something like this. All-inclusive resort vacations can make for an economical trip. As you can see, the paraphrased information is much shorter than the quote, but it gives the same idea. Now that we've talked about types of text evidence, let's look at a strategy we can use to write a short essay type answer. When we read a short story, a passage, or an article, sometimes we write short answers about what it is we read. How do we answer those questions about the text? We can write a short answer using the 3 steps of this strategy, AQE. First, we answer the question in sentence 1. Next, we quote our evidence in sentence 2. Last, we explain our reasoning in sentence 3. Let's begin with step 1. Answer the question. In this step, we answer the question asked. A simple way to do this is by restating the prompt. For example, if our question is something like, what is the character's biggest weakness? We can begin our answer by saying, the character's biggest weakness is, and then we can give evidence from the text. For example, we could say that he is not a very good artist. The next step in this strategy is to quote our evidence. We want to find the part of the text that helps best answer our question. This information should prove your answer. This information might be more than one sentence or multiple pieces of evidence, but we want to find the best evidence to best prove our answer. Remember that our evidence needs to be relevant and sufficient. It can't just be anything the author said and what we read. It has to do with what we're talking about, and it needs to answer the complete question. The last step in this strategy is E, where we explain your reasoning. After you put your answer and quote together, you want to explain in a third sentence how the text supports your answer. In this final step, you connect the prompt to the quote by explaining how they work together. You can remember these 3 steps by following the model below. Answer, quote, and explain the answer with support of your quote. Remembering this AQE strategy, let's continue. As we read the following story, listen and note any text evidence that can be used to answer the following question. What is the honey badger's greatest asset or quality? Remember, the text evidence needs to be both relevant and sufficient when we answer this question. Also remember, you can pause the video at any time, so the text will be up on the screen. You can pause it if you need to take notes, if you want to copy anything off the screen. Honey badgers. What's fiercer than a lion but smaller than a beagle? The honey badger, one of the toughest mammals in Africa and Western Asia. Honey badgers stand less than a foot high. They are only a couple of feet long. They weigh just over 20 pounds, yet they have a reputation for toughness that is far greater than their size. Some honey badgers will chase away lions and take their kills. I guess that goes to show you that size isn't the only thing that matters in a fight. So what makes the honey badger so tough? They have speed, stamina, and agility, but so do many animals. They aren't stronger than lions, so how do they stop them? The thing that sets the honey badger apart is their skin. Their skin is thick and tough. Arrows, spears, and bites from other animals can rarely pierce it. Small bullets can't even penetrate it. Not only is their skin thick and tough, it is also loose. This allows them to twist and turn to attack while another animal is gripping them. The only safe grip to get on a honey badger is on the backs of their necks. Honey badgers have long, sharp claws. These claws are good for attacking and even better for digging. Honey badgers are some of nature's most skilled diggers. They can dig a 9-foot tunnel into hard ground in about 10 minutes. They love to catch a meal by digging up the burrows of frogs, rodents, and cobras. They also use their digging skills to create their homes. They live in small chambers in the ground and defend them fiercely. They will attack horses, cows, and even water buffalo if they are foolish enough to poke around in a honey badger's den. You don't get a reputation like the honey badger by running from danger. The honey badger is fearless and a tireless fighter. They will attack any creature that threatens them, man included. Because of the honey badger's reputation, most predators avoid them. Some animals use the honey badger's rep to their advantage. Adult cheetahs have spotted coats, but their kittens have silver manes and look like honey badgers. Some scientists believe that their coloring tricks predators into avoiding them. Wouldn't you walk the other way if you saw a honey badger? You might be wondering, if honey badgers are so tough, how did they get a name that makes them sound like a piece of candy? The answer makes sense. Since honey badgers have such thick skin, bee stings rarely harm them. So honey badgers love to raid beehives. I can't blame them. Who doesn't like free honey? Honey badgers chase after honey aggressively, so much so that beekeepers in Africa have to use electric fencing to hold them back. There's nothing sweet about that. Beekeepers aren't the only people who have grown to hate honey badgers. Honey badgers may be fun to read about, but they are nasty neighbors. They attack chickens, livestock, and some say children, though they usually leave people alone. If a honey badger moves into your backyard, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I mean, are you going to go and tangle with an animal that eats the bones of its prey? An animal with teeth strong enough to crunch through turtle shells? An animal that never tires, gives up, or backs down? Yeah, I wouldn't either. Let's work through the steps A, Q, E together now that we've read this short story and see if we can come up with an answer to our question. Our first step is to answer the question. Our question asks, what is the honey badger's greatest asset or quality? Cite evidence from the text to support your answer. First, we restate the prompt by saying, the honey badger's greatest asset is. Now, what are some things that you remember from the text? Look at your notes to see if you have any information that can answer this question. You can pause the video here. Your answer might look something like this. The honey badger's greatest asset is that they are tough, they have thick skin, and some of the biggest predators want nothing to do with them. This answer gives a few details from throughout the text that shows things that answer the question, what is the honey badger's greatest asset or quality? Our next step is to quote the evidence. Looking at this part of the passage here, we can see that there are a few sentences that support our claim that honey badgers are tough and scare away predators. If we look at the underlined portion, this can be used as our quote. The honey badger is a fearless and tireless fighter. They will attack any creature that threatens them, man included. Because of the honey badger's reputation, most predators avoid them. However, before we just write the quote, we need to introduce it. Let's look at how this looks in our answer. Our answer so far looks like this. So we have our first sentence, which answers the question. We restated the prompt and gave some information from the text. That's our claim. Then the second sentence is our quote, but we don't just start with our quote. We begin by saying the author states, or we could say in the text we read, and then we begin our quote. We use quotation marks and we write the quote exactly as the author wrote it. And then we end the quote with quotation marks. At this point in our answer, we're ready for the last step, which is E. Notice that our answer is getting longer. In our last step, we have one final sentence to add to our passage. We're going to explain our reasoning by connecting the quote to our answer. We know from the text that honey badgers are small and have tough skin and are able to scare away large predators. Using this supporting information or any from your notes, how could you explain your reasoning? Pause the video here and try to finish your answer with one sentence. Your answer might look something like this. Being unafraid of anything, including humans, is a benefit to the honey badger because it means that even though they are small, most bigger animals will avoid them because they are intimidated. As we look at this entire answer on the next slide, please pay attention to how we use the AQE strategy. We answered the question with our claim, we use a quote, and explain the answer with support of our quote. We begin with step A and answer by restating the prompt. That's written here in black. The second part of our answer is the supporting quote, which is step Q. We remember to introduce the quote and use quotation marks. We can use a transition statement like the author states or in the text we read. Here in our essay answer, this quote is long and could have been paraphrased if you wanted to write it in your own words. Our last sentence is step E, where we explain our claim, how the claim and the quote work together. So let's look at this answer all together and see if it makes sense. The honey badger's greatest asset is that they are tough, they have thick skin, and some of the biggest predators want nothing to do with them. The author states that the honey badger is a fearless and a tireless fighter. They will attack any creature that threatens them, man included. Because of the honey badger's reputation, most predators avoid them. Being unafraid of anything, including humans, is a benefit to the honey badger because it means that even though they are small, most bigger animals will avoid them because they are intimidated. So as we want to check our answer, we want to check and make sure it has all three parts of the AQE strategy, and we can see that this one does. We want to think back about what our question was. And if this answers our question, we want it to be, our answer to be relevant and sufficient. So our question was, what is the honey badger's greatest asset or quality? So our claim is made that its biggest asset or quality is that it's tough and can scare away predators. Our quotation shows an example of that. It says that honey badgers even scare away people and that predators avoid them. So that supports it. And it's relevant. It's not just random information about the honey badger. It actually supports our belief that it scares away predators. And then our last sentence needs to explain how the quote we chose relates to the question. It needs to do that sufficiently. It can't just tell part of the information. So it touches on the fact that the honey badger is small, but that most bigger animals avoid it. So this answer thoroughly uses the AQE strategy to answer a short essay question. You could make this answer a little longer if you wanted to expand on any of the information, but 3 sentences has made a pretty good answer to this question. Again, you could also paraphrase the quote instead if you wanted your answer to be a little bit shorter.
All right, now it is your turn to do the same thing that Ms. Hilton just did. So our question is, what would be the safest thing to do if you encountered a honey badger? Cite evidence from the text to support your answer. So this would be the time to pause the video and go back to the short story, the same short story, and pick out evidence that would help you best answer this question. So go ahead and just pause it here or wherever and go back to the story at whatever point. Remember, it is important that you restate the prompt so that you can answer the question the best way possible. So what might our answer look like? The safest thing to do if you encounter a honey badger is to not attempt to put up a fight. They are strong, mean, and will not back down. So in the bold, we have we restate our prompt, and then we answer our question based off of information that we read in the text. Well, next, we need to find a quote that best supports our answer. So you just went back through and went through the short story that we had read, and maybe you found some information that works. Well, now you are going to cite and quote that evidence. So you're going to take that and put quotation marks around it, and that's going to be our second sentence. And we want to find a quote that helps best prove your answer. So whatever that is. So after going back through the short story, the last paragraph says, beekeepers aren't the only people who have grown to hate honey badgers. Honey badgers may be fun to read about, but they are nasty neighbors. They attack chickens, livestock, and some say children. Though they usually leave people alone, but if a honey badger moves in your backyard, there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. I mean, are you going to tangle with an animal that eats the bones of its prey? An animal with teeth strong enough to crunch through turtle shells? An animal that never tires, gives up, or backs down? Yeah, I wouldn't either. Okay, so I have highlighted or bolded and underlined the text evidence that best supports the answer that we came up with. And I would put quotes around this. But if a honey badger moves in your backyard, there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. I mean, are you going to go and tangle with an animal that eats the bones of its prey? So our answer this far would be the answer that we first came up with. The safest thing to do if you encounter a honey badger, where we restated our prompt, is to not attempt to put up a fight. They are strong, mean, and will not back down. So that's our first sentence. Our second sentence is going to be the evidence that we found. So then we're going to include the author stated, and in quotes, but if a honey badger moves in your backyard, there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. I mean, are you going to go and tangle with an animal that eats the bones of its prey? So we're 2/3 of the way done. We've answered our question, we've found a quote, and now we have to explain. So take some time to think about how you might explain your reasoning here, or what your sentence might sound like or look like. And this third sentence is how the text supports your answer. So when we explain our reasoning, it might sound something like, when it comes to fighting off a honey badger, there is no winning. So if you encounter one, the best thing to do is to turn around and walk away, because it will not back down. So this is where we bring it all together. So we have our first sentence, the safest thing you do if you encounter a honey badger. So we restated our prompt. To not attempt to put up a fight. They are strong, mean, and will not back down. We answered our question. Then the author stated, but if a honey badger moves in your backyard, there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. I mean, are you going to go and tangle with an animal that eats the bones of its prey? We quoted our evidence. We took directly from our short story and put it there, because that is the evidence that best supports our answer. Well, then we explain it. We take both of those and we explain and kind of prove our answer. And we say, when it comes to fighting off a honey badger, there is no winning. So if you encounter one, the best thing to do is turn around and walk away, because it will not back down. So there we have our 3 sentences. We have our question answered, we have our quote, and then we have our explanation of how all of it comes together, and why the answer and the quote, or why the quote backs up to prove the answer. So just a little bit of a recap for this video. We went over what text evidence was, and it's anything an author writes that we can use to support an idea, answer a question, or make a claim. And that's kind of what all the videos this week were about. And then what we touched on for the entirety of this lesson was that when we answer questions about a text, we first answer the question, then we quote our evidence, and lastly, we explain our reasoning. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.